We have a big show tonight, including some major political shifts from this second presidential debate. Democrats not only advocating for a world after Trump, but for moving the party left of Obama, which is now drawing pushback from his VP in these new comments.
I was a little surprised at how much their incoming was about Barack, about the president. The world has changed since Obama. And here's the deal. This is about the future. It's about taking the same kind of integrity and moving beyond it. The idea that somehow it's comparable to what this guy's doing is absolutely bizarre. There's nothing moderate about what Barack did in Obamacare. Nothing. No president had come close.
He was talking about what several top Democrats said on that debate stage.
Vice President Biden, I didn't hear your response when the issue came up of all those deportations. You were Vice President of the United States.
Mr. Vice President, it looks like one of us has learned the lessons of the past and one of us hasn't.
Mr. Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not.
In 2019 in America, for a Democrat to be running for president with a plan that does not cover everyone, I think is without excuse.
How did the race to replace Donald Trump turn into analyzing Barack Obama's legacy? Let me tell you tonight, the answer matters. And not just for politics, it matters for where America is headed. Do you remember where you were on, say, November 10th, 2016? 2 days after Trump won, which shocked most people, including many on his campaign. You know, the reality was obviously still sinking in, which made Mr. Trump's first trip to the White House as president-elect quite a moment. Do you remember seeing this footage for the first time? Obama, who knew all about Trump's race-baiting rise, who campaigned against him, welcomed him with grace and patriotism to the White House.
I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. We now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. It was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
It's still kind of weird to watch that. And that moment crystallized America's transition from Obama to Trump. The birther-in-chief sitting with the commander-in-chief he would soon replace. A seismic shift from an intellectual policymaker we had come to know to a loud entertainer many people thought they knew. From the forward-looking promise of yes, we can to the ominous nostalgia of make America great again. It's hard to capture just how profound that shift was from Obama to Trump. In the song American Dream, the rapper Jeezy boils it down to just 10 words. First, my president was black. Now my president is whack. Many voters basically agree, given Trump's historically low approval, but especially Democrats, 19 out of 20 support Obama right now, which makes the party's turn last night seem a little surprising. And a sign of that is coming already in today, because candidates who did tussle about these issues are quickly emphasizing today in public and tonight their arguments about building on Obama's work or even going farther on policy in some ways than he did is not intended as a knock on him.
I have nothing but praise for President Obama. I think he did great work. We talked about the healthcare system. Dolores talked about that. Many presidents before him tried to reform America's healthcare system. He actually got it done. My proposal is about taking it to the next step, but with all righteous and due credit to President Obama.
Let's get into it. I'm joined by the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation. He's also met with several of the candidates and was a political friend of Barack Obama. Pablo Ramos, host of Vice's Latinx, also former deputy director of Hispanic Press for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and longtime Washington reporter, columnist for the Daily Beast, Margaret Carlson. Good to see all of you. Rev, What do you think about the balance here? Certainly parties evolve, and building on health care or building on issues where Democrats feel Obama was obstructed by Republicans is certainly different than saying he didn't get enough done while he was in office.
Well, I think that, I was there last night, both nights, and I think where they come off a little disingenuous is some of them that are saying that they would be a little more progressive than Obama were very regressive in criminal justice and other matters themselves. So you want to know, when did they have this great progressive meeting on the road to Damascus? You're talking about people that are saying that he didn't go far enough, that were actually doing some of the things that we had worked with President Obama to stop getting done in terms of criminal justice.
Well, Rev, isn't the road to Damascus paved with politically convenient self-congratulatory tweets? Isn't that what all primaries are about?
I think that's
Are you
true.
going to name names?
No, what I'm going to say is, I was just attempting to answer your question. But what I am going to say is that I think that it really smacked to me of they were in a real mode of political desperation because they were trying to pin the tail on the donkey of Biden, and they inadvertently hit Obama by accident. I think.
And do you think that helps? So does that ultimately help Joe Biden? Because a lot of
I think it does help Joe Biden, because if I was debating, when I ran in 2004, we debated in Fox Theater. The last thing I would have done is wanted to have the front runner identified with the most popular Democrat in the country. I would have tried to say, I helped Obama get ADA, therefore I'm trying to help more. I would not have let Joe Biden own Obama by himself if I were them.
Now,
they went the other way.
I know you're more of a James Brown and a soul person, but this sounds a little bit like a Snoop Dogg line. When you diss Obama, you diss yourself.
Well, you must remember James Brown helped set the trail for Snoop Dogg, so I can do both.
It's true.
So I have a little bit of a different view, right? I think that today it's very important, this idea that in order to look forward, in order to build this progress that everyone is talking about, we have to look back, right? We have to recognize the mistakes that we made in the past. And I think that's a line that Julian Castro said yesterday, specifically referring to immigration, right? President Obama was an incredible president, but you cannot deny the fact that under his legacy, 3 million people were deported. Those are not just numbers. No, that's not just statistics. That's pain that a lot of people are feeling. No, those are families. So I don't see anything wrong with someone looking at that, taking that pain and saying, we can do better. That's not an insult, because those people that are requesting that apology, those aren't enemies. No, those are the Democrats' biggest allies. So I think it's important to leverage that.
I guess one of the questions that becomes a little bit deep or metaphysical between the 2 points you just made is, are you assessing that based on the politics of today or then? And the farther back you go, go ahead.
I think you're assessing it both, because I was one of those that disagreed with the policy then. And I agree with her that we could do better. But I said that then in meetings with Obama. What I'm saying is the people saying it on the stage last night were not saying that then.
Back then.
And they were not saying that enough. They have become these overnight progressive converts. And that's what I'm saying. I had access to President Obama and publicly fought with people around DACA and did marches and all of that. They were not there. So I'm saying, wait a minute now. If we're going to hold President Obama accountable, which we should, we've got to hold you accountable, too.
How about that? Because there is a difference between maybe someone like Bernie Sanders, who says he's always been pushing left and at least has that history, whether you like him or not, and some of what Rev is calling the converts.
I completely understand. I do think in the last few years we've changed, right? And the movement has changed. And Dreamers are telling us something different. And Black Lives Matter are requesting something different. And trans people and queer people. So I think what we're seeing is that people are listening to them, right? They're the ones that are telling us to challenge our standards, our ideals. Things that we thought were right back then don't necessarily make sense today. And I think there's nothing wrong with hearing them and bringing them into the conversation and simply acknowledging that, again, it was not okay to deport 3 million people.
Let me bring Margaret in. And Margaret, take a listen to one of these exchanges where Biden tried to get ahead of it and say, hey, I have Google, too. I have Wikipedia, too. And if we want to go through anything anyone's ever done, let's talk about it. And got back and forth with Cory Booker on some of these related issues, which really, to be clear, we're talking about the treatment and the rights and the due process for Black and brown people in America. Take a look.
Why did you announce on the first day a zero tolerance policy of stop and frisk and hire Rudy Giuliani's guy in 2007 when I was trying to get rid of the crack cocaine.
Mr. Vice President, there's a saying in my community, you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor. This is one of those instances where the House was set on fire and you claimed responsibility for those laws. And you can't just now come out with a plan to put out that fire.
Margaret?
When I heard that, Ari, I thought that former Mayor Booker was channeling you about the Kool-Aid. It sounded like one of your lines. The big mistake, well, the good thing that happened for Biden last night is that he wasn't mullered. He came out, and I think the whispers that he's past his prime and he's too old and he's a little decrepit, I think those will be tamped down for a while. But he turned into a malleable scold. At one point, he said, the world has changed since Obama because he was taking so much incoming that he wanted to wiggle his way out of that. I mean, you asked to speak metaphysically, and I'm not sure this is, but what the people on stage didn't do as they're trashing, the greatest legislative achievement of the Democrats over 8 years, the ACA, was compare what Obama did, even on deportation, which, as your other guest said, 3 million is not something that to be proud of. But no one compared it to what Trump is doing. I mean, by comparison, Gallup finds Barack Obama the most admired person in the world. And in our fractious times, 66% of Americans across all parties approve of Barack Obama. How much better can you get than to be associated with Barack Obama?
That's a striking statistic. How do you reconcile that with Donald Trump's inaugural crowd being so much larger, depending on the math?
There's some things you just can't explain.
Rev?
Yeah. No, I think that Margaret is right. I think that my problem is that clearly the Affordable Care Act was absolutely one of the greatest achievements of that time. And we need to go further. Clearly, many of us questioned the deportation at that time. And if you're going to say that I didn't see it then, but I see it now, then you also got to give Joe Biden an opportunity to say the same thing. You can't have it both ways.
Well, and that's where...
I think that's where it broke down. But in criminal justice matters, which has been a lot of my work in National Action Network, there were a lot of them that did things that we could not get them to stop doing and not do, that we were pushing Obama. Right. When we were in Ferguson, which is 5 years ago next Friday, and we'll be back there, dealing with Michael Brown's shooting. When we're dealing with Eric Garner, they were doing stop and frisk in some of these places. And I'm saying that if you've grown and evolved, and I think she's right, you can say that you've evolved and say that you were wrong.
For you, and then Margaret, I'm going to bring Margaret back in, but just as a follow, was Cory Booker then, was he nailed a little bit on his history?
Last night, I don't think he denied it when Joe Biden said you hired Giuliani's guy and y'all did stop and frisk, and he went on into the '94 crime bill.
So was there a little Kool-Aid on everyone, to use a metaphor I'm not sure I fully understand?
Well, I think that when you dip in the Kool-Aid and you already have colored it differently, you ought to not dip too deep because you might get your finger dyed a different color.
And as you know, who can forget, Margaret, the dyed fingers of the revolutions abroad? Sometimes that's where people vote.
The purple fingers.
Yeah, so the dyed finger, as I'm learning at the Rev's knee, I learn every night when we get Rev on, it can go both ways, the Kool-Aid. Final thought, Margaret, as promised, from you.
I want you to learn something at my knee. There is a sleeper candidate that I saw Tuesday night, and that was Governor Steve Bullock. And he tried to pull the progressives back when he said it used to be that Republicans wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare, and now it's Democrats. And if he makes it to the next debate, I think if we end up looking for, say, a Biden, if Biden falters, and I'm not wishing that he does, it could be somebody, a blue man, a blue governor in a red state that Trump won by 20 points. He won by 5, the only one in the country to do such a thing. And he's right smack in the middle, and I think he can get the swing voters.
And Cory Booker always says, if you mix blue and red, you get purple Kool-Aid.
Purple, yes. It's purple Kool-Aid time. What does the Rev think of that?
That's how you know you're on the beat. When you hear it's purple Kool-Aid time.
What do I think of that? Purple rain.
Where's Tom? It's Tom Wolfe time. Ori, let's go back and read Tom Wolfe.
Mau-mauing of the flagjackers. Shout out to Tom Wolfe.
The Kool-Aid acid test.
And the electric Kool-Aid acid test. That's maybe Ken Kesey? I'm stretching.
Oh, I thought that was Tom Wolfe.
Yeah, look, my producer's saying we got to go, and I think it's mostly a note for me. When they're nice to me, it's their way of saying cut it out. I learned a lot from each of you, and I think we had a vibrant but also really policy-oriented conversation. That's the last thing I would add. All of that debating last night, we ended up talking a lot about criminal justice, about deportation statistics, about what Obama did. Maybe that is a break from some of the way politics has been lately as well. Rev, Paola, Margaret, thanks to each of you.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.